thank you for stopping by the garage. I'm Sean, and this is the build of the Revell BR01 steam locomotive. Overall, another great Revell model. Didn't really have any issues with it. A couple things to keep in mind with the build. The wheels. These wheels here, you glue them on first, and there's no right way, well, there's a right way and a wrong way, but they're just round pegs, so they'll go on any way you put them on there. So you can see the position of the wheels with the weights this way on this side, and then the position of the wheels with the weights to the top. That's because the drivetrain is an alternate design. So if this one's going out, this one's going in, out, let's see, it'd be out, in, that sort of thing. So putting the wheels on is the first step, and then you come back, and the second step is putting together the drivetrain, and it goes into the holes of the wheels. The directions tell you, but it's small print, it's just kind of a side note, and if you're a builder who just looks at the pictures and just glances at the words, you'd miss it, and you'd be trying to cut your wheels back off and doing some remediation. So if you do build this model, keep the wheels in mind, because you can mess those up. Otherwise, if you do it, everything fits in perfectly. Didn't really have to do any finagling or anything too much with the drivetrain to make it work. It went into place nicely on both sides. The other thing was to get the red inside the silver and the silver on the outside without getting one color onto the other. There was some back and forth touch-ups a few times on the track. If you can see the track, it'll focus. There we go. Had to paint that the way it's glued onto it. 1/87th scale is HO scale, so you could actually just use HO scale model railroad rail. It's the same size, and this would fit. And I thought about that, but I kind of wanted to challenge myself to see if I could make this track look real. And I think I did. I'm happy with it. Another challenge, of course, being 1/87th scale. It's still a pretty good size steam locomotive, but that means the writing and the wording and everything is 1/87th scale, which makes for tiny, tiny decals. There's not many decals. There's a few, but they're all small. So I had my little scissors out, little tweezers, and getting them on there and getting them straight. Revell decals are kind of thick, so you'll definitely want to use your decal solutions to get them to settle down into the crevice. Decal softer was really important to get it on there, especially with like this, the 01, 005. There's a plate bump that sticks out of it that goes on, and the decal's slightly bigger than that, and you needed the softer to get it to conform to the curves and not stick out. Once you put that on there, it just melted right in there like it's supposed to do, so it's nice. The color, the black is Tamiya semi-gloss black. The red is Tamiya red. And the rails is a Tamiya titanium, I think is what it was called, as well as the silver. And the wood on the railroad ties are a mix of Vallejo browns that I just kind of watered down and did coat after coat until it looked wooden enough for me. And then once I put the decals on, and then I sealed everything in with a combination of Vallejo gloss and Vallejo matte, and I got a nice semi-gloss color. I wanted it glossy but not glossy, and so, you know, I guess eggshell is what I ended up with, I think, because it's got a shine to it, but it looks like it's a working locomotive and not a museum piece. And speaking of museum piece, there was an option in here. I could have made it to the museum piece design in the book. All of these, the plumbing on the side of the locomotive for all the steam and water lines If I wanted to do the museum piece option, those would all been painted copper. And you can see, if it'll focus, those are tiny. Could I do it? Yeah, probably. But it would take some time, and I wasn't interested in taking the time. I was happy building the workhorse. That was my plan anyway. So I didn't do any weathering on it, because you go back and look at steam locomotives, they're always pretty clean, especially these European ones where they like this red. I went and looked on YouTube and looked up some videos of this, and I never saw a dirty one. Of course, nowadays they're all in museums and running museum pieces, so yeah, they keep them clean. But I'd like to think when they were actually in service, they probably kept them pretty clean then too. Because a clean locomotive, especially steam, you got to keep everything clean, otherwise I would think it would mess up. So I didn't do too much weathering. Didn't think it was needed. Plus it's black. I mean, it's hard to weather a lot of black other than just ruin the red and make it look black and sooty. And so I didn't choose to do that. The coal is, of course, painted black, and then used the Tamiya weathering pack B. It's got soot, white, rust. So after everything was glossed, I went over it with the soot, and then rubbed some of the white into it, some of the rust, and then went back over it with the soot again, so you get the 3D variant color of the coal, where you can kind of see, because coal is kind of shiny, kind of not, depending on how you're looking at it and what piece it is. So I wanted it to look like that and be a different shade of black from the rest of the locomotive, because it's got to look like it's not just molded into the locomotive, which it is. Otherwise, no real difficulties. This is an older model. I think it's over 20 years old. I saw a copyright on one of the pieces, or on the sprue, I guess. I think it said 2003, so 22 years old. This instruction manual print that I got looked it. It was a fine print in itself, but it looked like it was a Xerox copy that was scanned, that was copied, then scanned, then sent to the printer to be printed. A lot of the blacks were not sharp, kind of, I won't say blurry, but I don't know. If you've ever copied a Xerox copy of something that's been copied of copies, that's kind of what it looked like. Fully legible. Wasn't that big a deal, but it obviously wasn't a fresh print. It was a copy of a copy, which is fine. It's 20 years old, so that's good. And being an old model like that, this is a recent press. This isn't like an old model I bought off of eBay. It's a newly manufactured model with an old molds and dies. Not much flash, very little. All the pieces fit well. The only thing I had a little bit of issues was the top here. Trying to get that to seal in tight, I had to putty that. And then doing the sanding. I didn't want to get too crazy with it because all these plumbing lines, I didn't want to risk damaging those. So I just did enough to heal it, and looks good enough. I noticed one thing after it was all glossed and complete. If you look at the box art in mine, I forgot. Looks like I forgot to do this red stripe right here and this red tank. So this is supposed to be red and that's supposed to be red. I didn't notice it until actually I was getting ready to sit down to do this video, and I'm definitely not going back to fix it. So it is what it is on that. I'm going to say it looks good black, and I meant to do that. But the truth is I forgot it. The actual build is coming up next. Enjoy. And at the end of the build, of course, there will be detailed photographs, so you can actually see the detail and everything. So thanks for stopping by the garage. Take care and enjoy the build.